Hi there. Today we have a special guest, Angela. Hi, Angela. Thanks for joining. Angela is a mother, a homeopath, a healer, a fellow LFM member, and today's very special guest. I'll just show you my LFM hoodie I have on tonight. It's the warmest hoodie I have. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Yahna.
So, I'd like to talk about you, of course. This podcast is designed to learn more about everyday people, I suppose, and discover what makes them unique. And I'm also very interested in your work. So, how would you like to start?
Oh, what a question that's so open-ended. How would I like to start? It's one thing when you introduce me, I'm also a focusing practitioner as well. So that's something to remember. So I'm a homeopath and a focusing practitioner, and I also sometimes use the work of Byron Katie to question the thoughts, which is incredible work.
So, how did you begin working as a homeopath?
Oh yeah, so my story, yeah, so how I came across homeopathy. I was really quite a sick child. Like I had so much wrong with me. And as I sort of came out of my childhood, I'd had my tonsils removed, I had IBS, I had chronic fatigue, and throughout my teenage years, I had constant respiratory tract infections and coughs and colds, and I was taking antibiotics for it, and I was noticing that they weren't helping. They weren't shortening my acute phases, and they weren't stopping me then going on to catching more. So I already had so I was observing that, and then somebody in my family had mental health issues, or that's what the term is in conventional medicine. I would say trauma. So I was watching this family member be on medications and never get better. Like it was just a never-ending process for them. I didn't see any resolution. So I was starting to question the medicine that was being offered, the conventional medicine. And so in my early 20s, I just went on a bit of a journey. I was like, I need to find something. I am so unwell. I need to find something that isn't just going to be like putting a plaster on. It's not just going to deal with the symptoms. It's going to go deeper. And I tried to acupuncture, and I didn't really resonate with that. And then one day it was in North London, and I was walking past this clinic, and I don't know, I just went in and booked an appointment. I had no idea what I was booking in for. And it was a homeopath. And I don't know, there was something about it that resonated with me. I was in my early mid-20s. I probably really had never been listened to as a child and a teenager. So, you have an hour and a half's consult that's sitting there listening and letting you talk. So I probably quite like that aspect. And then you get these little pills at the end. And then what I noticed is because I have polycystic ovaries, as well as many other things I've already mentioned, is that I just noticed I was having two periods a year. So I would go and see her two or three times a year over a period of, I don't even remember now, like 5 or 6 years or something. And I just watched my cycle become closer and closer and closer, just gently and smoothly. But I also I didn't know it was like a whole person medicine. I didn't really know much about it. I was just sort of, I don't know, it just felt okay. It felt right.
So, was
But
it mainly the polycystic ovaries and the irregular cycle that sent you looking?
yes, because I was very worried about not being able to have children. And at one point, the homeopath said to me, she said, "Oh, you should study this." I was like, "Meh." And then, anyway, so look, I had children. It took me 3 months to have my first child. So
Wow, that doesn't
what
seem like long.
I know, right? So whatever I was doing was working, and yeah, I was interested. I bought a book on homeopathy, and then we moved to Australia, and I do not want to start photography shoots anymore. It just doesn't work with children. It's very stressful. Moving countries, let's do something new. And I took these bark flower drops called walnut for indecision. And I swear it was the weirdest thing. Like I'd taken the whole bottle. I was open-minded. I didn't know whether it was going to work or what was going to happen. And literally by the last drop of the bottle, I went, "Oh my God, you have to study homeopathy." like you just have these little keys along the way of your life, and you just go, wow, okay, that was quite a turning point, and that's another turning point. So I studied homeopathy while having children, which was quite full on. And the one thing I would mention is one of the most amazing remedies I had during that time was a remedy called Staphysagria. And I know other people have this amazing experience with this remedy. It was the most powerful remedy I had. I took a 10 m daily for 3 months. That's how much I needed of it. And it's very much a remedy about suppressed anger or suppression generally, suppressed emotions. And when you grow up in an English family, it's always about, just sticking things under the carpet and not necessarily, and that was the time as well in the 80s, and not really encouraging communication about emotional issues. So yeah, it was such an incredible remedy that was for me. I have had other powerful remedies, but that's been the absolute standout, and I always like to, like share that. And then just more recently, so I've became a homeopath. I've been practicing for around 11 years. And then you find other things that work with homeopathy. So I have started doing something over the last 5 years called the focusing technique. And the focusing technique is just such an amazing way for us to get to know ourselves. So know thyself. So it's a process of dropping into the body. And then we sit with a felt sense, and you can do it in pairs, or I like to do it in a circle because it's really powerful. And I do it on myself morning and night. And because like the body is nature, so we're sitting in nature. So I don't need to go outside and sit in nature. I can sit in my body, which I do daily. And it's really interesting. It's hard to sort of explain this because we talk mostly on a head-to-head level, but when we drop into our bodies, it's like we embody information in a different way. It's like nature teaches me her ways. And in the last couple of years, I've really begun to understand the foundations on such a deeper level on what homeopathy is based upon. Like it's incredible. It blows my mind.
It's amazing how many people, myself included, until the last few years, are not used to being in their body,
Yeah.
like present in their body, because we're so used to being in our mind and thinking about things and rationalizing things. And the last several years, I've made an effort to live more heart-centered, which is different. But yeah, being able to be in your body is a skill in itself, I find. We actually had a call about a year ago, and I had some hip pain, and you were still practicing the focusing technique at that stage. And we went through a call, and I've only had one call with you, but I found it really beneficial. And since then, I've actually used focusing technique on myself a few times. When I get an ache or pain or an injury or something, I kind of drop in and go, okay, what is that? Where is it? Why is it? What do you need? Um,
Mm.
and just by sending that part of my body attention and loving attention, I find that's enough for it to actually resolve on its own, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I found it really helpful. And it's something I can do myself, and I can be anywhere. I don't need anything externally.
Yeah.
Yes, fascinating. So,
Oh, that, Yana, that really warms my heart as well to hear that, and I can see the difference in you.
so yeah, that's been really beneficial for me. So how does that pair with homeopathy? How does it complement it?
Do you know if you can start a consult and you can get, not, I mean, not everybody can get there, but if you can get them in their body because it's like you're under the preconceptional mind. I mean, we see it like this, so you're in your body, you're under your mind, right? But it doesn't really work like that. And so if somebody's talking from not their mind, they're talking from a deeper place, you can actually get to the homeopathic medicine really quickly because you just don't have all that white noise in the way. It's another way also, like I can give remedies and stuff, but it's another way if you can get your clients to drop in to their bodies and they're speaking from this deeper place, there's a level of acceptance that goes on. So you sit with a felt sense, which could be, similar to like butterflies in your stomach. And we just sit there and it's like You're sort of sitting with a part of yourself. You're offering your hand in the most gentle, kind, soft, loving way. And it teaches us to be just so kind to ourselves.
So does the focusing technique complement homeopathy in your experience because homeopathy is about energy
Do you
and
know what?
focusing technique is kind of about energy?
Mm, I think there's many roads to Rome, right? So people will find what works for them to get in their bodies, whatever that is. Could be for some people for dancing, some other somatic experiences that they find. You find what resonates with you. We find, which is what homeopathy is based upon, like cures like, we find what resonates with us. Um, I enjoy focusing for me because it's really got me into my body. Like it has you as well, it's helped you. When we have experiences as a child that we don't like what's in front of us, we go into our heads and because we don't want to feel, we really, I love the saying that we need to feel to heal. I think that just says it all. We've got to accept every single part of ourselves to truly embrace who we are and to heal. There was recently, it was a really flippant comment. I spoke to a friend and she was having hot flushes. And I said to her, okay, well, next time you have one, feel into it. Don't lean away, feel into it. And I saw her a week later and she said, oh my God, they're 50% better. I was like, great, right? It was such a flippant comment, but it was just because of doing the focusing that I put it out there. A month later, I saw her, she said 95% better. Now,
Wow.
as a
Just
homeopath,
by paying attention to them.
yeah, absolutely. Now, as a homeopath, we love to give remedies for everything, but actually, we don't need to. Sometimes we just need to listen to our bodies. And the way I see homeopathy, it's like this, like there's an iceberg, right? The top of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is your symptoms. It's what we experience in our everyday life. But there's this whole, the rest of the iceberg under the water, and that's way more important than the symptom. And modern medicine still hasn't worked that out. I mean, obviously there's psychotherapy and well, that's more alternative, but there's talk therapy, and that can help. But if you're very heady, unless you unless when you're talking, you're slowing down and then allowing things to emerge from a deeper place, you're really not going to get anywhere with talk therapy.
So, what is homeopathy?
Such a great question. Well, homeopathy is its own medical system in its own right. We could pretty much use that 95% of the time. It is based on the laws of nature, so natural law. And I would even say it's as far as it's sacred science, what it's based upon. And it's only in the last couple of years that I've really began to embody through the focusing, the understanding of the laws that it's based upon, because the laws are everywhere in nature. And that is one profound medicine that's based on laws of nature. So the main law that homeopathy is based upon is like cures like. So a client presents with their unique symptom set, and then we try and find the remedy that matches their symptoms, and then that will extinguish that. It's as simple as that.
So when you say matches, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar suffering is what it's called. So your client presents with, X, Y, Z, and you go through your materia medica, you do all the research, and you find the medicine that most matches it.
Energetically?
It's an energetic medicine, yes. Are we matching it on an energetic level? We're matching it to the person in front of us. So it's like we have to match them in mind, body, and spirit. It's like the triangle, mind, body, and spirit. And we take the whole person into consideration.
So before I met you on the Living Free Movement platform and heard more about homeopathy, I had the impression, I'm not sure how or why, that homeopathy remedies were a bunch of herbs. that were distilled into tinctures or pills and given as remedies to people. But since learning more about homeopathy and since using homeopathy and uh, talking to friends who have used homeopathy, I've come to realize that the remedy itself, the little pilules that you take, is actually a distilled down essence from the plant. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
You're not so far off, right? What we do is we get the plant, we have a pestle and mortar, and we grind, and we keep grinding, and that's a bit of a process, a trituration process, and we are going on a journey with that plant sometimes when we do this, depending on how long we do it for. And then the energy of that plant is being released during the grinding, the pestle and mortar stage. And then just if we think about the centesimal range, the C potencies, we take one drop of that and we mix it with 100 parts of alcohol, and that is a 1C. But between each dilution, because then we take one part and mix it with another 100 parts of alcohol, that's a 2C. But between each one, we have to succuss it. So Hahnemann, the godfather of homeopathy, he wanted to use substances, but poisons and toxic substances, but he had to find a way where they weren't going to hurt people. It was understanding that you can still use, mercury, belladonna, arsenicum, but he was diluting them, and then he came across the succussion between the dilutions. And so beyond a certain potency, there's nothing of the original substance left in your medicine. So it is
Oh,
100% energetic medicine. It has a frequency, a vibration. And homeopathic remedies can be made from anything on this planet.
wow.
Absolutely.
So not just plants. You can use
Yeah.
chemicals, you can use metals, you can use minerals.
Well, we say the main three classifications are plant, animal, mineral. But
Okay.
there are so many. You can make them out of diseased matter from the body. You can make them out of hormones. There's even a remedy made from the Berlin Wall.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what parts of animals get used in remedies?
Yeah, so if we think of homeopathic apis, which is for bites, that's made from the honeybee. So we know it's for sort of inflammatory reactions and bites and stings.
Okay.
And there's the snakes are a really interesting group of medicines, and some of them are made from the whole snake, and a lot of them made from the venom of the snake.
It seems Chinese medicine uses a lot of animal parts. How does homeopathy compare to Chinese medicine?
The way I would describe it, I mean, I don't know too much about Chinese medicine, but I would say that, when you think about any sort of herbal medicine or Chinese medicine, you are using it more on the physical state. So when you have a plant and you're using it in its herbal state, it will, it will work for this many symptoms. But it's a bit like a tree when you make it a remedy out of that same plant and you think of the top of the tree that opens up like that, well, that's what, when you make it into an energetic medicine, you have so many more symptoms, so much more of the plant is revealed of what it heals.
Wow. So it's a lot broader. It covers more things, not just body as well.
Yep, it's a lot broader. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
And forgive me, I still don't understand the difference between homeopathy and naturopathy.
Completely fine. I wouldn't expect you to know. And a lot of people do ask this all the time. The way I see it, well, homeopathy is its own system in its own right, so you can just do homeopathy. Naturopathy is what I call an umbrella term. So naturopaths will know herbs, herbal medicine, they'll do iridology, they might even do a bit of homeopathy. They can draw on all those different modalities. But but with homeopathy, it is such an extensive and expansive subject, you can just do that on its own, and it's an incredibly powerful medicine. And the reason, the way I've understood it now with going into my body and letting nature teach me is homeopathy is this, because it's built on the foundations, which there's two more laws I can talk about with homeopathy, but because it's built on the natural laws of the universe, I've come to the conclusion that, when we go into our body, we're going to the deep well of our being, which is like endless possibilities. Homeopathy is the same. There are so many different ways you can take homeopathy. It is such an expansive and an amazing and humongous modality. If you made a remedy out of every substance on this planet, you'd be covering everything. You'd have millions and millions of remedies. I mean, we have over 9,000 remedies now. No,
Wow.
they've been proved.
Does that
Yeah,
mean you can create your own remedy?
absolutely. You can create your own remedy out of anything. And
Wow.
that's a part of homeopathy that's really exciting. And I mean, there are enough medicines out there, but to really understand a medicine, to do a trituration proving, where you sit there with your pestle and mortar and you sit in a group and you're doing this and scraping for almost an hour to get to do a C1 level. And somebody's writing down all what everybody is saying. There's an energetic frequency at that C1 level, which matches the physical. It's all the physical stuff that comes up. And then when you go onto a C2 level, you're doing that for another hour again. You're going more onto the emotional level, and each level has a different relationship. So you can go onto the etheric body, and then when you're going up into
Ah.
the things, you're going up, way up into the expansiveness of the universe. I think the highest somebody's gone to in a substance is or I'm not sure, so around the early 20s, I think.
So you're exploring the capacity and the layers of a remedy?
You're exploring the essence of that substance.
Okay.
You're embodying it, and that is, I think it's, how could we term that? You're like jumping into this plant or whatever it is, the substance you're doing, you're jumping into it and really embodying and beginning to understand it from such a deeper level.
And you would use a different number C for an emotional um, challenge versus a physical one, but the same substance?
Yeah, you can. Yes, there are different levels that match in a C potency that you can match to if your patient is showing up more with physical issues or a mental or emotional, you can sort of match a potency to that level. Yeah.
Very interesting.
But
So,
I do tend to feel, if you've got the right remedy, you would design your potency to match their state. But if you were a little bit out, it wouldn't matter if it's the perfect remedy for that person. Like homeopathy is quite forgiving like that.
okay. I had some treatment from you at the festival, Living Free Festival, last year. And so that was after I worked with the focusing technique with you and found it really beneficial. And thankfully, you were attending the first aid tent at the festival. And the first day, I didn't want to interrupt the crowd while a speaker was on. So instead of walking the quickest way, I tried to go around. And in order to do that, I had to push myself off of the stone wall that I was sitting on. And I bent my thumb back. So I came for treatment for that. And I also use some Alleviate from Natural Artform, just a bit of a plug for that product. It's fantastic. As well as getting treated at the first aid tent. And then within a day, my thumb was full movement back to normal, which was great. The second day, I had a really heavy headache, which was borderline migraine, and I actually started to feel nauseous. So I came to the first aid tent again for treatment, and I was so surprised at how fast it worked.
Oh,
Because I had this impression that homeopathy was something that you had to do over and over and over a long period of time, and you had to build up the dose, and it took a long time for the remedy to draw out the symptoms and therefore resolve the issue. I didn't realize it worked instantaneously, like it actually immediately treats whatever the issue is.
I'm wondering what I gave you. Do you remember?
I can't remember. I wish I did.
I wonder if it was like something. I wonder if it was something where there was a specific, like it was belladonna or something like that. 'Cause that's such a good throbbing headache remedy. Or whether it was a homeopathic mix. But anyway, regardless, but the thing with homeopathy is if you're coming for an acute, that's the beautiful thing about acutes. They can work, it's almost miraculously It's a miracle. It's like,
Yeah, I was
wow.
really surprised. I thought it would take, you know, hours to weeks to kind of take effect, but I was surprised it worked straight away, which is great. So much so that I invested in this kit from you, which is fantastic, um, which
Ah,
has up to 20 different remedies in it.
yep.
And I custom picked the ones that I wanted. So I've definitely got a headache one in there because I frequently get headaches, although
Yep.
less these days. Also have been a long time sinus sufferer, so I've got a lot of hay fever and sinus ones in there.
Yep.
I find I use this now instead of other remedies that I've relied on. So, for example, I stopped taking Panadol about 5 years ago,
Mm,
and when I do get a headache, I was taking Feverfew, just the herbal capsules. But I found that Feverfew only works right at the beginning of a headache. But if I've already got a headache, it does nothing.
mm.
And I have to keep taking it regularly. If I wake up in the middle of the night with a headache, I take a few little pillules that you've given me for my specific headache remedy, and I go back to bed. And in the morning, I totally forget I even had a headache. It's gone.
Wow.
So I find these remedies really amazing.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. I mean, yeah, homeopathy is an incredible modality, really.
So, is there a reason why remedies work for some people but not for others? So, for example, you mentioned before that it was an individual treatment and you treat the whole person that's in front of you. So, after the festival, I came home and raved to my partner about how great these homeopathy treatments were. And he tried some because I was just so confident in them. And once I got my kit, he tried a few for headaches and sore throat and sniffles and things. But in his opinion, they didn't really seem to work for him. So is there a reason
Mm.
why they work for me, but they don't work for him?
How interesting is that? I mean, the remedies you've got there are actual combinations. So then, it's not true homeopathy, but it's better than using antibiotics or
It's a start.
Panadol. Yeah, it's the ease of use, those ones, which are great when you just don't have the time to work out exact which remedy. I can't say for sure why that is. I mean, if he had a more specific tailored remedy, it might be different. Those blends, those combinations, so if we were making a headache mix, we would pick, say, 5 to 10 medicines that we know are really profound headache medicines, and then we put them in a blend together. And then we find that, one or two of those remedies, because we don't know how blends work. Medicines are not tested together. They're tested singly. So when you put them
Ah.
together, how the effect it has on the body is unknown, but it works for you. So it's known but unknown. So we don't know which ones are working on you. There might be a couple in there that are just so spot on for you, and there might be 10 remedies in there that are so not spot on for him.
So if there's five ingredients in a remedy, let's say headache, for example, could
Yeah.
it be that two of those are working specifically for me and the other three are kind of just sitting there, not active, not doing?
Absolutely. I mean, we just don't really know. All we know is that it works for you, and that's great. But it's like we can make these combinations and we can put 10 medicines in there, 7 medicines, whatever. But they would probably only work on 90% of the population. I don't know what percentage, there'll be these either side that just needs some random medicine that's a lot smaller. It's not a main headache remedy. It may not even be known to be a headache remedy. They might have a very unique style headache.
That's
We
true.
can we
Yeah.
can have 10 people rock up with UTIs, and 10 people would have varying symptoms. This person maybe their UTI, they get a headache with it, it's a really interesting symptom. And this person becomes I don't know, really, really, really irritable, and they never are, and it's those little keys that guide you to the medicine. But all these 10 people could have a different remedy each for their UTI.
All right.
Yeah.
So is there anything that homeopathy can't treat?
Is there anything homeopathy can't treat? Well, if you've got a broken bone, we really would advise you to go to the hospital and get it x-rayed. There are medicines that knit bones, However, you want to make sure your bones are in the right place before you start taking medicines to knit the bones, because the last thing you want to do is knit a bone in the wrong position. You cannot use, I mean, you can alleviate symptoms. So I do know of a case, it was emphysema. And so his oxygen saturation levels, this is this is irreparable, irreversible damage to the lungs. So you can give homeopathy and it could improve the oxygen saturation. I do know of a case where, the oxygen saturation levels did go up. And his symptoms bothered him less, but you're never going to get rid of that completely. So
So
yeah,
if like treats like, and you're treating the you're not just treating the symptom, but you're treating the underlying cause or condition.
well, you're treating the person. Yeah,
You're treating the person. So is it that the symptom has a, let's say, energy, for lack of a better word, the remedy has an energy, and because they're similar, they cancel each other out?
absolutely.
Okay.
Got it. I say the remedy cancels out, extinguishes the symptoms, cancels out the symptoms. There was also a couple of other foundational principles that I could quite like to share with you. So we've talked about like cures like. That's the main one that homeopathy is based upon. And there's a couple of others. So the other important one is the law of the minimum dose. And I don't know, I really resonate with this. It's like less is more. So you can imagine it's like a dartboard, and you've got this collection of symptoms, and you want to get the remedy that is the right. It's such a similar remedy to their state that you want to get that medicine right in the middle. Sometimes we get it around, and it will partially get rid of some of the symptoms, and then you need to give another medicine. But if you're aiming your dart right in the middle, you get the minimum, and it is a really spot on remedy. You don't actually need to give much medicine. Like some people respond to one, two, or three doses really well. And then what we see is it's like an onion layer. So you give the medicine at the top layer and you pull a few layers off. And then you say, okay, so you're here again. What's your next layers? And they'd have completely forgotten about what their first issue was, which was like, oh no, how's your sleep going? And they'll go, oh yeah, I came for sleep. Oh, sleep's fine, because that's been resolved. And then the new layers. And then what we see is when people return with, oh, I've got this verruca on my foot. I haven't had it since I was a child. And you're like, then we are really starting to pull those layers back.
So I find that like most of the time one dose will do me. Sometimes I need a couple. Only once when I was really congested, I used one of these for 3 days in a row. And
Mm,
then that was enough, but I had to kind of use it for a few days to get enough relief. I notice on the little container it has the minimum dose, and then it has um, for example, every 15 minutes for 5 doses, and then reduce to hourly, and then continue 3 days. So, how do you know when to keep taking a remedy or when to stop taking a remedy? And is it just based on the symptoms going away?
yeah. It's how you respond. It's always how we respond to a medicine. I mean, those combinations are slightly different. You're responding really, really well to them. Not everybody responds so beautifully. Um, and, depending on what kit you've got at home, single medicines, you want to get the right medicine for the problem that you have. And you'll know, you like you take a dose. It's like, oh, I'm still hot. I've still got a fever. So then you take another dose. And then, oh, I feel slightly better. So you take another dose. And then you notice, oh my God, it's completely clearing up. And so you could take one more dose, but why would you take any more? It's always this beautiful sort of dance that you have with your body. And with people that are taking homeopathic remedies, they are really like clocking into themselves. They're becoming aware, and that's the best thing we can ever do is be aware of ourselves. So you take your medicine and then do I need? And then you ask yourself, do I need another dose? Do I not need another dose? It's not. modern medicine is conventional medicine, the health system that we have is very different from homeopathy. It's like you have this and this, and you have to unlearn this, where you get told to take your antibiotics for 10 days in a row. And this is like it's a whole new way of learning. And it's based on the laws of nature. And this law of the minimum dose. It, it's like less is more. That's the lesson. And you see that everywhere in nature. Like we don't need lots of houses and cars. It's not going to make our life any richer. We don't, and sometimes less words is more. When you sit with a friend and they're telling you their issues, sometimes just sitting there, just going, and just holding space, less is more. It's everywhere in the universe. And so there's also this it's the third law of third Newton's law, and it's for every action there's a reaction. And so when we take a remedy, that's the action, and then your body reacts to that. And your body is always trying to find balance, right? Homeostasis. And it's sort of like a pendulum. Your body's here, and the pendulum is the remedy, and you give a dose, and it's like kicking the body to heal itself. And if you give too much, it swings back the other way and starts producing symptoms. And then you just stop the medicine, and it just
It's all about balance.
comes back into balance.
Hmm. So is that where the word homeopathy comes from? Homeostasis?
No, no, it's a Latin. Homeo, similar suffering, pathy,
Hmm.
suffering.
And how did you mentioned the founder of homeopathy's name earlier?
Hahnemann.
Hahnemann. So how did Hahnemann discover that like he was like?
Yes, so look, essentially, like cures like always existed. It's a law of nature, it's a natural law, it's a universal principle. And we'll see that play out in life. Like the partner we find will help us cure ourselves if we let it and we are aware. And I found homeopathy has cured me. I found focusing that's really helped me come into my body. I call my partner my muti, in which is medicine. He's my medicine. Um, now I've got off topic now.
That's okay. We can go to another topic, actually. That's a good segue. So if
So how
like
did he discover homeopathy? Yeah. So this law of like cures like Hippocrates talked about it.
ah,
It's in ancient it's and if we think in other cultures as well, it's let me think of so we think about Kabbalah and Western mysticism, and they in the Emerald Tablet they go as above, so below. That's like for like, right? It's all just nature's laws. Well, anyway, back to your question, Arneman. We go around in circles and then we come back. Was an incredible man, highly intelligent. He became a doctor, but not for long. He was a translator. He spoke a few different languages. He was a chemist. He was a scientist, and all these collated for him to not discover homeopathy, but discover something that he dove into and just went deeper and deeper and deeper into it to work out. What is this? So he'd given up being a doctor. I don't even know how long he lasted, but I think it was under a year because of the medicine of the day was purging people, and it was
was that
violent.
when they used to bleed people to make them
Bleed
better?
people. They wanted to make them sick. They wanted to make them, emit all their look. It was, and then would put mercury on their syphilis. Yeah, lots of barbaric treatments, right? And he was a kind man, Hahnemann, he didn't want to see his patients suffer. And I think he literally came in the end to the agreement or the thought that, oh my God, this medicine is killing my patients. And he didn't want to kill people. But it was all about money, like it is still today. And so he stopped being a doctor and he translated medical texts from various languages in Europe. And he came across this article about cinchona bark, China bark. And it was talking about this guy, I think he was taking China bark and he was producing malaria-like symptoms in himself. But he didn't agree with what the article was saying. He was like, I was questioning it, like, this can't be right. So he took some China bark and he produced some malaria-like symptoms. And then that's when he sort of dove into it and go, well, what is this? So are we saying that if somebody came along with malaria-like symptoms, I could give them this remedy and that would get rid of that? That would extinguish those symptoms. And so, yeah, he went on an absolute journey, an absolute incredible man. And what he observed about health in those times, you can imagine this is the end of the 1700s. And he's telling everybody about this beautiful medicine. And the pharmacists of the day don't want to know because they're making quite a bit of money with their potions and lotions and they're killing people, really. And yeah, where was I going with that? Such
Oh,
a
we're just
good.
talking about how the discovery of light cures light came about, how
Yeah.
homeopathy was founded. Because, yeah, it just seems fascinating. Like, I never would think of that as a concept. But as you explained, it actually is a universal law, LORE. So, yeah, it's surprising that,
Yes.
yeah.
And, I can compare it to focusing as well. So, Eugenie Gendelin, he again, another curious man, wanted to know, wasn't happy, wanted to dive in. And so he was actually a philosopher and he was working at the University of Chicago with Carl Rogers. And his question, so he had a question. He said, why is it some people get, they heal from psychotherapy and this group don't? What is it about these two groups? What is it this group are doing that this group aren't doing? They're healing, this group aren't. He watched thousands of therapy sessions. And what he worked out was this group, they would do this thing where they would slow down and when they were talking and they would word search. And so these words would come from this deeper place within. And it was that he spotted that in those sessions and he went on a journey with it. He goes, what is this? What is this place that people are dropping into? Where are these words coming from? And that's how he discovered focusing, which is this somatic body-based practice, a process, and you drop into your body and you sit with what we term a felt sense. And so we could describe, when you're nervous about something and you are worried and you get that sense in your belly, which is butterflies on your tummy, and that would be termed a felt sense. So we go into the body and we sit with that butterflies, that feeling, and we just sit and we sit and we go, oh, I'm sensing, this part of me in my stomach feels unsettled and nervous, and then. If our focusing partner will reflect those words back and we'll take those words into the body and it's like, and it really builds your intuition, and that body part responds to those words, and it changes, and it heals, and it releases, and it takes minutes. Out. You can work on stuff for days or hours, or it releases really quickly, and it's an incredible process, and it's the perfect way to know thyself. And when we sit in our body, we are sitting in nature, and it teaches us stuff. It teaches us. I have this image, right? I step out into the world and I'm in the external world, or I step back into my body and I'm in the world of body. And this world here is very different from this world here. The external world is all around what others want you to know, how society expects you to be. It's very heady, it's judgmental, it's about money, ego. But then when we drop back into the body, it's the symbolic language, it's the language of images and metaphors, and it's truth and it's nature. And when we sit with nature, she teaches us her ways. What I've learned with focusing is we have to embrace, to be a whole person, a whole being, we embrace all of us, every single part. And with that embracing process, it's accepting all of ourselves, every part of ourselves. And yeah, it's just an incredible process. And what it does is any parts, we get to sit with these vulnerable parts of ourselves, and then they release. And these aren't really parts of ourselves. They're parts that have become attached to us throughout our life. You know, in homeopathy, we see the onion layer, but in focusing, we see the sunshine. It's like your Buddha mind, your Buddha nature, which is always, always there. And then you have these clouds that come in all the different parts of yourself, the judgmental part, the impatient part, the part that thinks you're great, the part that thinks you're terrible and you're worthless and you're this and you're that. And when we sit with these parts, they don't have a stranglehold on us so much anymore.
I find noticing helps a lot. So once you notice that you have those parts, and like we said before, paying attention to a pain or a message or a feeling or a body part, it really makes that not necessary anymore. Like, because it just wants your attention. It just wants you to notice it. And it is very interesting discerning. Discernment's a big one. What's mine, what's not mine, what has come about during my life, and what don't I need anymore. You know, we've got
Mm,
all these clouds, but we don't necessarily need them all. I like that
mm.
analogy that being with your body is like sitting in nature. I like that idea.
Yeah, and so at the weekend I went and sat in nature by myself for 2 nights, 3 days because I thought, well, let's do focusing in nature. What am I going to get out of that? What am I going to receive? What am I going to experience? And it was quite an incredible journey. So, when we're out in this external world, we're very unaware of our body. And then when we step into our body and I was going to go somewhere with that.
Well, we're talking about noticing and feeling and peeling back the layers of the onion
Yeah,
and being in nature.
yeah. Hmm, lost it. But
So you've been through three of the fundamentals of homeopathy. Were
I
there?
have, yep. So like cures like,
Mhm.
the law of the minimum dose. Someone's wanting to say hello, this little bit of nature behind me. The law of the minimum dose and the third, Newton's law.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so action versus reaction. And we can see that everywhere. And so with COVID, that was the action. And now we're having the counter reaction. So you see how these laws are just everywhere. Yeah, it's a profound medicine. Yeah. Yes, so that's what I was going to say. So when you step into here, you've got mind chitter chatter, it's all head talk, it's the world of impossible. But the more you step back into your body, the more you're in the world of endless possibilities. And so when we open up that channel, we open up to such a bigger, brighter reality. Mm. I've had some credit experiences with the focusing technique, actually. I've dropped into my body and I've had some grief come up in my lungs. And as soon as it's so sudden, suddenly this grief, and I felt my dad here. Just I could feel his energy. And then so I just released this grief. And other days I'll drop in and I'll be in my kidneys, and my kidneys will be, they said something to me like, you need to express more, you need to tell people how you feel, you need to, share your feelings a lot more. What else today? Yeah, I get to sit with these parts of myself and I see them, and I see a bench and I see this part of that I'm sitting with that day, and that part will be the deflated give up part, and it looks like a puddle on the floor, or it'll be a part that's just really sad. And the way I described it, it's like I give these parts of myself the microphone if they want to talk, and we sit with them in a way like how we would sit with a shy animal. So it's gently, we're not in their face, we're patient. We don't fire lots of questions at them. We soften those questions like, I'm wondering why you are feeling like this. And so it really teaches us to be with ourselves and to be kind and loving and tender gentle.
So it sounds like focusing is noticing, feeling, asking questions, and discovering more of what's going on with you.
Yeah, it's the true way of how to know thyself, you
So
know? And
where
why
did
do you
focusing come from?
and why would you not want a degree or a master's in your own self?
Yeah. You should be an expert on that, if
Like,
nothing
it's the
else.
most interesting subject, is it not?
Most people will find, yeah.
Yeah, so focusing, yeah, so I have talked about where it came from. I talked about Gendelin, Eugenie Gendelin, and how he discovered it, and then what he did with it, basically. He started to have classes where he found a six-step method, which is, far more evolved these days. And um, yeah, and doing the focusing, it's like, it really does teach me the language of metaphors and images and analogies. And I've had some really interesting images over the years with focusing. And one of them was, there's two actually. One of them was like it was around, like the world, right? The world is round, and it was this round shape. But the round was a old clock, right? And it had all those, the parts that are in a clock. And it was showing me that for things to happen, all the parts have to come together. And it was showing me how manifestation works, basically. Like you can have these ideas, these intentions, da 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 da, but you have to wait for all the cogs to come together, and then zoom, everything will unfold. And then I also had this image of with like a rifle, right? And you're looking, and it's got the target, and it's on the wall, and it's the infrared, and the target is where you lay your focus of attention in any given moment, the present moment. And it's like focus. It's this sharp pinpoint focus. You're taking it all in. So
I'm
I
learning a lot along the way too, so it's
I'm glad to
interesting
hear that. Yeah, so
hearing about it.
focusing for me, like it's what I suppose in the future, what I would really like to do with it is support not just homeopaths, but practitioners anyway, or anybody that's wanting to step into their field and they know they've got something of value to themselves, but there's too many parts in the way. So once we sit with those parts, they no longer have a stranglehold on us. Mm. So for me, when I sit in circle and do focusing, because when we have, focusing for me, because I built up a certain amount of presence, can be quite powerful for me, but it's so much more powerful, exponentially more powerful, two or more people together. So when you get a circle of people focusing, we're shifting energy, we're shifting these parts, we're really listening to ourselves.
So, have you run a few events in New South Wales, where you're
Yeah,
based?
Yeah, I've run events where I teach people how to use homeopathy, and more recently, I've been teaching just talking and having open conversations and workshops around homeopathy and natural law, and really trying to because homeopathy's very much been aimed at young families for a long time, mums and their kids, and it's fantastic medicine for children. Like even you can pick three remedies and you can get your child to pick which remedy they need. I love that. It's magical. But this is a everybody medicine. We can use it on our plants. We can use it on agriculture. We can use it
Oh,
on pets.
yes, I'd be very interested in learning how to use it on pets because I'm committed to keeping my dog as natural as possible.
Yeah, great.
And I love using natural remedies on him. But yeah, I'd be interested to know whether you can use remedies on pets and are they the same remedies and doses? For example, if we go traveling like we did recently, and he actually got a treat stuck on the roof of his mouth and injured his mouth because it got jammed. And
Mm,
he was bleeding, and it was very traumatic for both of
mm.
us. But in that instance, could I use my cuts, pustules in his water to help that heal?
Yeah, absolutely you could. I think we just got to bear in mind that dogs respond a lot quicker to
Ah,
medicine. So you give one dose and then you would just watch and wait and see how they go. But yeah, cuts or bumps and bruises or arnica, calendula, all those medicines would have been perfect for that. But also think of silica because silica is it's beautiful medicine. It's called the homeopathic surgeon. So we use silica when we want to expel parts that don't really belong to us. So you could use silica for if you're in a car accident, you had bits of glass in you. You can use it when you can't get a splinter out of your finger. So this is an extra part. You can use it when you want to detox pus out of your body. It's a great detoxifying remedy.
well, that's good to know. You can use it on pets and kids as well. Yeah.
Yep,
You
yep,
don't necessarily have to adjust the dose like that you
you just give
take.
them less, and you can there's different ways you can give it. You can either pop it in the water, but then you have to be careful because if the dog keeps going back to the water, they're going to get a dose, another dose, and you don't want them to dose them. So what you can do is just you can give it on a teaspoon, the pill, and you can just pop it up into their gum. I think I quite like that way. Or if you've got a Labrador like I used to have, and they love their food, you get your saucer, you put the tablet on there, and they're licking it up. So you can do it that way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So speaking of families and children, when you had your children, you were studying homeopathy. So did
Mm.
having that knowledge and that experience change things for you in terms of your birth plan or things that you decided to do or not do with your children?
That's a really interesting, a good question. I was very much on my journey then, so I didn't vaccinate the kids, not because of any particular knowledge up here. It just didn't feel right to me. I was thinking along the lines of, well, if pharmaceuticals haven't really helped with my cold flus, haven't helped with mental health issues, then how's it going to help preventing diseases? And was I that scared of disease that I needed to feel like I needed to prevent it? My kids have had measles and whooping cough. There's homeopathy to treat them if they catch stuff like that. I think we can get caught up in the fear of and not trusting our own judgment about these things and going off what others think we should do. But it's always about coming back what feels right for you. And vaccinating may feel right for you. And that's okay, right? If that's what you need to do. But for me, it just didn't feel right. So there was no question, really.
And I suppose it's about asking the question, isn't it? Not just assuming, well, this is what I've heard, so I will do this. It's actually, tuning into yourself and going, does this feel right for me? Do I need this? Do I want this? And, being okay with whatever the answer is, I suppose.
Yeah, and using your own power to make these decisions. And that's another thing with focusing. There's so many benefits to focusing, and one of them is your relationship to yourself. Things become so obvious. Your body will tell you stuff. And a typical example, I was at a market recently, and I was walking around this market, and after an hour and a half, my body literally went, okay, it's time to go home now. And I was like, well, this market's not on very long. My head's overriding my body. So I stayed for another hour. By the time I cannot tell you how exhausted I was on that drive home. I went home and had an hour's sleep, and my body was like, didn't listen to me. But I did come home with a big pile of nice clothes. So
Oh, that's good.
So the other benefit, and I'd love to share. Oh, this plant always wants to talk to us. I'd love to share the other benefits of focusing because there are so many benefits. Like I have done a lot of meditation in my in over the last 10 years, but focusing's on another level to meditation. I think doing both together is also powerful. But focusing it teaches your connection to yourself improves. Nature begins to teach you her ways. You become a lot more heart-centered because you're sitting with these parts of yourself, and you become softer and more bodily wise. And you then begin to notice the difference between having conversations about learning stuff and that there's actually a deeper way to learn things, to embody information. And that is way wiser. It's like ancient wisdom, that embodiment process. There are other benefits to focusing. There's like you can release trauma. So we do need to be careful sometimes if somebody has a lot of trauma. We're sitting with these really delicate parts, but we always know that, we have the handbrake, we're in control. We can always slow the focusing down, if it's becoming intense. What else? Yeah, it's just we can use it to problem solve as well. So we can take, say we've got things happening in our lives and we want to know more. So we take it into that body and we find that felt sense where the feel of that sits in our body and we sit with it. And sometimes the body will give you guidance or it will give you options. You go from the external world where the problem is and you take it in the body, and this is the world of limited possibilities. You take it to the body, well, suddenly you're in the world of endless possibilities. Like you're in the living processes part of yourself. So anything can arise. Mm.
So focusing can be used for physical ailments. However, when you're focusing, you may discover that there are layers to the onion and there may be emotional or other things beneath that are
Yes,
that the body's expressing physically.
I can give you an example. So occasionally I get this urethral pain, and I'm always like, oh, I wonder what that is. And so when it arises and I have time to sit with it, because I still haven't quite got to the bottom of it, I'm getting there. And so I've got the pain there, but when I sit in my body, I realize the actual issues in my kidneys. So the pain dissipates, and then I sit in my kidneys, and my kidneys talk to me. It's like they say, I've got a. I was in my kidneys today actually, and there was a part of me that was, oh, if things don't go the way that my day is planned, there's this part of me that just goes, oh, like it's the end of the world and it's deflated and it's in a strop and it's like, oof. It's kind of interesting when we sit with these parts.
Do you think focusing ties in with, I'm just looking at my bookcase over here, The
Hmm.
Secret Language of Your Body, Ina Segal, and you mentioned somatics before, and talk therapy can draw some of those things out. Do you think focusing is kind of, it's complementary to homeopathy in your experience, but maybe it would be complementary with all these other modalities as well, or as part
Absolutely.
of that?
Yeah, I mean, lots of psychotherapists use it, but that's where it sort of stemmed from.
Hmm.
Yeah, it has multiple places, and it's kind of interesting because there's the IFS stuff, the internal family systems, and they talk about parts work, and their parts work is very similar. It's not always completely the same. You know, we tend not to label them, but for when we talk about it conceptually, we talk about, the protecting part, and there's I've had an image of like a security, like there's this security part, he's like the right? When something is going to hurt me, this part comes in to protect me. It's so interesting when we're working on this subconscious level of our body and all these little parts that make up who we are. And what I notice is that you can have one part and then you'll have the opposite part, but one part will be more up the front, or more in, more driving, will drive the bus more. But if there's somebody in society you meet that has this part as more up the front, you two may clash a little bit.
Ah,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, really fascinating. It's
That
like,
explains a few things.
yeah, so much.
Sometimes you're not sure why someone just rubs you up the wrong way.
Yeah.
Probably
So
because they're reflecting a part of you you don't really want to
well, they're reflecting you. You
feed
have the
to.
opposite part that's more driving the bus, and their opposite part is driving their bus. So
Hmm.
because I find like us, I've realised over the years, I spent my 20s being quite loud and extrovert, and actually, more I've come back to myself. When you sit with these parts, they don't have a stranglehold. You're becoming more authentically you, and I've realised that I'm actually a quite sensitive, quiet person. And so for me, when somebody's really quite loud and in my face, it's too much for me. My quiet, sensitive part is just has to take a step back, and I get a little bit overwhelmed with that. And so, yeah, learning about yourself, right? And what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and why you're being triggered.
Yeah, that's a big
And just
one.
and just to notice and go, oh, isn't that interesting?
So, Angela, what do you think makes you uniquely you?
What makes me uniquely me? Well, my story, my history, my childhood, which recently I had an experience through the focusing and other things I was doing. And I realized that my childhood had been based on a lie. I told myself, when that realization that, like we sort of have two worlds, we're a practitioner over here and we love all the different modalities, and then there's conventional medicine. And yes, there are some crossovers, but there's a lot of misunderstanding over here in the conventional world, not understanding that the symptom is the tip of the iceberg, but the iceberg's the more important part. So they're focusing all their attention at the tip of the iceberg, but just really that's just signs and symptoms. They're just clues to what's going on underneath. Shine that torch in the water. Let's have a look at the deeper iceberg. And this whole business of mental health, it's all trauma based. And yes, this is really coming to the forefront in society, but just drugging people that are traumatized. Well, let's look underneath. Why are you traumatized? What's going on? What happened?
And also, like you said, it can be based on something that you've told yourself or a story that you've had running for years or something that you've perceived one way, but in reality it just was, and you've created a meaning out of that event or out of that feeling. So it's discerning that as well, you know.
And that's where the work of Byron Katie comes in. As she says, an unquestioned mind is an unhappy mind. Is that true? Can you absolutely know that that's true? How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? Turn the thought around. Okay, and give me some examples of where the opposite is true. It's incredible work. Within 20 minutes, you do those questions, bang, whatever was bothering you is no longer bothering you anymore.
A lady I used to work with recommended Byron Katie a couple of years ago. So I
Mm,
looked at a few of her things. Kind of reminds me of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, a little bit, and
yeah.
NLP, where you reframe your situation so you can change
Mm.
the meaning of something. But it's very interesting how you might uh, assume that your issue is over here. And then when you focus and go exploring, you find out that your issue is actually way over there and it's something that you didn't expect. But
Yeah.
that issue that you didn't expect and you've just uncovered is actually causing this issue over here. It's very
Mm.
interesting. I recently engaged with another person on the platform to do some diving into emotional and spiritual health. I've been working on
Mm.
my physical health the last 5 years, and realized that because I'm a whole human and I have lots of parts to me, I need to also work on other types of health, not just physical. And we started the session, and this was the second session I've had with this person. And she said, "Okay, what would you like to work on today?" And I said, "I would like to work on this topic. I'm struggling with this thing at the moment. Let's do that." She said, okay. She said, actually, something else is coming up. Do you mind if we explore this? And I said, okay, let's go where you feel we need to go. And we ended up doing something completely different. But you know what? It was something that I really needed. And it was something that I had no idea was sitting there in the background. And it actually influenced a lot of my life up till now. And it's just fascinating how when you really focus, you realize the things that are driving the bus. Um, Fascinating. Had no idea it was sitting there in the background just the whole time, influencing my decisions, influencing how I felt about myself.
Yeah.
And she had the foresight um to know that that was what needed to come out. And yeah, very
Mm.
fascinating because I wasn't even going to go there. So
Yeah, okay.
Very
And so
interesting.
yeah, and so when we do, things like the work of Byron Katie, and I've been doing that for many, many years now. I'll do it less and less these days, but it sort of does the work in the background of you. It's so ingrained to you in you that when something happens, you can turn the thought around straight away. And it actually gets to the point where, I can have a conversation with my partner. He lives in Melbourne, I'm in Sydney, and so we're talking a lot on the phone and we have a video call and he says something and then I notice like something in me and I go, ah, okay. And within less than a minute, I've got to the root cause of it. I'm like, so when
Wow.
you say this, I feel unimportant. That makes me feel unimportant. I need to go work on that. And so there's no blaming in this relationship. It's like we own our own shit in it. And that's an incredibly powerful place to be. And that takes me back to an experience I had last year where I was sat on my partner's steps outside his house in Melbourne, and I had this experience where everything fell away in that moment, like the cars and houses and all the artificial stuff, actually, the fake stuff. And I stood there and I went, oh my God, you and my family and my friends and the population at large are the only things that are important on this planet. It's connection. It is absolutely connection. We need to sort out any disconnection. That's a learning about ourselves every time. Like life's just one big mirror.
Would you say that connecting more with yourself helps you to connect better with others?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was a real light bulb moment, actually. Like it was a realization on such a deeper level of our existence and why we're here. And so, knowing that, our body is nature, so the only things that are important are the real things, a desk, going to school, all that is it's it's almost like it's artificial. It's not the true who we are. The true who we are is us, the trees, so everything that encompasses nature. How we respond and communicate with our fellow humans.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I've really enjoyed the journey with you, Yana.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your passions of focusing in homeopathy and helping us discover more about what makes us uniquely us. And perhaps some people will explore homeopathy or learn more about it and look into focusing. I found it really helpful myself.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I guess that is the journey is knowing thyself and then everything happens from there.
Can I just say how much I love the title, Uniquely You? It's really well thought out. It's really creative.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I asked the question and that title came to me.
Love it.
All right. So, if people would like to learn more about homeopathy or focusing, can they learn that from you, even though you're based in New South Wales?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So,
What's the best way to find you?
yeah, so you can either find me through Instagram or my website. My website's probably a better way to find me. You're going to put my details at the bottom of the video. So, yeah, just click on the link, everybody. That's how you find me.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks so much, Angela.
All right. Lovely to chat.
You too.